everyone, and welcome to the Industry Insiders podcast, the show brought to you by Edinburgh College, which gives expert advice and inspiration whatever your career goal. I'm Heather, and this episode is all about primary teaching. With 13% of primary teachers retiring in the next 10 years, there will be more demand for new workers in this area. With us today is primary teacher Emma Jane Stewart, who is going to be talking to us about all things teaching. Thanks so much for joining us on this episode, Emma Jane. So first of all, we want to hear from you about your experience getting into primary teaching. What did you study and how did you eventually get into your job?
Yeah, so I always knew I wanted to be a teacher from leaving high school, and there are options out there to go straight into a 4-year course. I decided not to do that, and I decided to do an undergraduate degree in another area to specialise in something, just to keep my options open in case I changed away from teaching. And then I did the 1-year conversion after taking a year's break from my undergrad. So I did the PGDE course, which takes 1 year, and then you go into probation year automatically after that.
Okay, so what did you do your first undergraduate degree in?
I did my undergraduate degree in history and international relations.
Ah, okay, interesting. And how did you find the kind of difference between going into from a subject like history and doing your postgraduate in the teaching for the year?
I'm really glad that I did it the way that I did. I think that it meant that I was older and more mature by the time I started the teaching, and I think it's nice to have a break from school, because if you go straight from school to education, and primary school education should I say, you're essentially in a school for the whole of your life.
Okay.
So I'm glad I took the 4 years out, and I also think it helped develop things like essay writing skills and things like that. Yeah, I think it was worth doing.
So it made you a kind of better student, as it were, for doing your kind of...
and it meant I could cope with the 1-year conversion course as well, because it's quite intense, but I'd already done 4 years of studying, so I was ready to do the 1 year intense and get it done.
Okay, nice. So you said that you had your probation year, but did you have any work experience while you were doing your final year of teaching at university?
So when you do the PGDE, you do placements whilst you're on it. So the one that I did, you did 3 placements across all the different sort of age groups in a primary school. Okay. But that varies depending on which university you go to. They all have different placement schemes that they do. But as far as I know, you can get all the information for that during the application process. Okay. In terms of having more experience, though, more generally with children, it's something I can't recommend enough. You should definitely get as much as that under your belt if teaching is something you're interested in doing. Okay. And do you think the experience of having your work placement set you up for your probation year? Did you feel more prepared for it? Yeah. It's a really good thing to work alongside different teachers. So like I explained, I got 3 different placements across different ages. And each one was in a different school and therefore with a different teacher. Right. So first of all, seeing lots of different school settings sets you up for probation year, because I got to experience like schools in really challenging areas, but I also was in quite affluent areas. So that's really important, because in your probation year you don't know where you're going to go. Okay. And then getting the opportunity to work alongside 3 different teachers, and all teachers have very different styles. So you get the opportunity to sort of pick their brains and pull away the bits that you like and get to learn the bits that you wouldn't do yourself. Okay. So yeah. And you said you had kind of 3 different placements. Yeah. So was that 3 different age ranges within a school? That's right. Yeah. I did 2 weeks in a nursery, then I did 3 weeks in a P3, 6 weeks in a P5, and then 6 weeks in a P7. Wow, okay. And did you have a preference at the time after your... I did actually. I really liked the middle, so the P5 one, and I don't know if it was because of the kids or the teacher I had at the time, because she was fantastic. But interestingly now I'm all about the primary 7s. Okay, so you like the older. Yeah. Okay, interesting. So what was the most challenging thing you would say is about being a teacher? Teaching comes with a lot of challenges, absolutely. It can be really time consuming in terms of the planning, particularly here in Scotland where our curriculum is quite loose. Okay. There's not very much written down concrete, and so you can spend a lot of time looking for resources. And if you care about it, which most teachers that I know do, you could end up doing that for a long period of time because you want to give the children the best experiences possible. And so that can be quite a never-ending process in terms of planning and paperwork. And sometimes the children that we face can be quite challenging too. So there are definitely challenges with teaching. And so I guess my biggest piece of advice there is make sure it's something you really want to do. Because if you're not passionate about it, you'll find it very difficult.
And so going back to work experience, did you do any work experience throughout high school and things like that that kind of got you your entry into your PGDE? Did you do anything else out with that?
Yeah, so when I was in high school, I did a lot of sports coaching with children that were younger than myself. I mean, I was a kid at the time, I guess, but with children that were younger. And so that's how I got a flavour for what teaching might be like, and decided from then that's what I wanted to do. Then when I went off to do my 4-year undergraduate degree, even then I was doing things like nannying, and I was the scout leader as well here in Edinburgh to keep my contact with children up. And again, further confirmed to myself that teaching was definitely the thing that I wanted to do. And then I took a year out and just worked. And during that year of working, I had the opportunity to be part of an education team at Science Centre here in Edinburgh. Wow. So again, had more experience of delivering programs to children, but also planning them. So again, a further taste of what it was going to be like to be a teacher. And then when it came to the interview for getting into teaching, the whole interview was centered around the experience that you have. So experience is vital if teaching is something you want to do. It's what it's the only thing they're looking for, really, aside from grades, where you need to tick the box that you have certain qualifications. It is all about exposure to children, and you can't talk about how you would teach if you haven't been around kids in the first place. You need to know what that's like. So it's so important for the interview. Okay, great.
And what would you say, on the flip side, is the most rewarding part of your job as a teacher?
Well, no day is the same, and you can get up to lots of fun, interesting things that I don't think any other job gets to do. So for example, today is Burns Day. So I started my day out in the playground doing Strip the Willow with 250 kids and all the staff in school for 20 minutes to some bagpipes. And, you know, that's really good fun. So that's really good. And you meet a lot of lovely, endearing characters in the children. There's some really great kids out there. And knowing that you make a difference. It doesn't happen all the time, but when someone says thank you and you know that you did something and they meant it when they say thank you, that's really nice. But I think it's the fun part. Teaching's really fun.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you ever meet children that you've taught, like, later down the line?
So I've only been a teacher now for 4 years, but my class that I had in P7 last year are now in high school, and they often come back and see me. And wish they were in high school and I'd have them back too.
So obviously, being a primary teacher, you have to do lots of parts of the curriculum, lots of different subjects. What would be your favourite subject to teach?
Yeah, I'm quite bored. I love teaching writing and I love teaching maths.
The core?
The core.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No, I really like teaching. I think there's something nice about the structure that goes along with those subjects, which really suits my style. But it's very individualised. Like, I work with teachers that adore teaching art or PE, and I mean, I enjoy these things too, but for me it's definitely the maths and the literature side. Okay.
And thinking about all the kind of influences you've had throughout your university experience and throughout your work experience so far in schools, what's kind of the best piece of advice that you've been given for your job?
My tutor, when I was doing my PGDE, said to me that when your holidays are coming, make sure you treat them as a holiday and always make plans. And I think that's super important because the job Monday to Friday is very intense and you could always be doing something more. So when the holidays come, it would be so easy to spend all the time getting prepped for the next school year or the next term or whatever. So I think that she was right when she said it's time to turn off, because if you're not fresh, you won't be the best teacher that you can be. So yeah, I think that was the best piece of advice I ever had.
And take time out for you, because you won't be able to deliver to the children.
No, if you're grumpy, they know you're grumpy and it's just a disaster. So it's better to be relaxed.
Good.
So take your holidays when they come.
Great piece of advice. So now we're going to move on to some questions from our students at Edinburgh College.
Sure.
So they've got in touch with us and asked us to put some questions to you. So the first one is, how much do you actually get to plan your lessons?
So in terms of resources, there are things that exist, but it could be quite individualised to the school. So you can, some schools will buy into programs for things like maths and writing and reading, and so with them you'll get a lot more structure around the planning and a lot more input. So you're not sort of left with a blank piece of paper and going, "Oh, I'm not too sure where I'm going with this." But if you're in a school that doesn't buy into that, then you do have to put a lot more into it yourself. And it can be quite hard work, but there are loads of online resources that you can access for free. There are also ones that you can pay for. Okay. So there are ways to help with your planning. And if you're lucky enough to be in a school that has more than a single stream, and by that I mean like 2 primary 7s or 2 primary 3s, then you can team teach as well. Okay. So you might decide that you plan some of the lessons and your peer will plan some of the other lessons, and then you simply swap. And that's a really great way to half the planning, especially when the resources can be quite scarce. Yeah,
so you do get support from other kind of staff members in the school that might have done that theme before.
Absolutely.
Or whatever. Okay.
And I think it's important to note as well that whilst that sounds quite scary that there's not that many resources that are written down in the Scottish curriculum, it's actually one of the best things about it too, because you can really run with whatever the children want to learn. And so if they're excited about something, it is okay for you to say, well, let's go into that a bit more, and let's just do something a bit mad with this, and that's okay, because there's not a set on Monday you need to do this and on Tuesday you're doing this. So yeah, that's actually a really nice part of the job, as well as being quite a tricky part too.
Okay. What was it like being on placement? We're kind of going back to the placement work experience. Did you actually get to take lessons during your placement, or was it all kind of observing and learning?
So the particular course that I did was really balanced in terms of observation and leading lessons. A big piece of advice I would give is, if you are on placement, take every opportunity to take the class that you're given. And if you feel like the teacher that is mentoring you is not giving you that opportunity, I would absolutely ask for it, because the more experience, the better. But in my particular experience, it was, my first placement was sort of half and half, and it was like half of the weeks I would observe what was being taught, and then the other half it was up to me to run them. And then that would reduce as well, so it would become less observation and more taking the class. But like I say, if you're given opportunity in your first placement to lead the class, then take it, because when you go to your probation, there's no one to lean on. Like, you are running the class, you are the class teacher. So take the chance to teach when you can.
Okay, get your hours up.
Absolutely. It just helps you feel more confident. Definitely. So
this is maybe the more unglamorous side of teaching, about marking. So do you get guidance during your studying as a student on how to mark?
Yeah, marking is actually fairly manageable if you make the decision as the teacher to make it manageable. And what I mean by that is, in Scotland there's a big push for using assessment methods that don't necessarily involve the teacher all the time, or involve the teacher in different ways than, like, you and I might have traditionally seen in our jotters, would be a tick and a comment. Teaching is trying to make a move away from that, where it might be a conversation with the pupil there and then when they're doing the work. And so we would call that verbal feedback, or it's getting pupils to assess each other, because everybody should know what we're aiming towards at the end of a lesson, so they should have a good enough understanding to tell another pupil where they've went right and where they've went wrong. It could be asking the pupil to do it for themselves. So marking has a place, and I do mark occasionally in a week, but it's not the be all and end all in terms of giving the children assessment and giving the children feedback. And the university goes over all the things that I've just tried to describe there. So there's definitely guidance in the way of marking, but it's not the most daunting task in the job at all, as long as you don't make it.
Good to know. And so when you applied to do your PGDE teaching year, did you get an interview, and can you tell us a bit more about the interview process?
Yeah, so all the universities in Scotland that offer teaching do interviews, every single one. They're structured differently, so I had interviews for Edinburgh, Strathclyde and Glasgow, which all looked slightly different. So I guess you can look into that closer to the time. But so just talking from my own experience, here in Edinburgh it was a group interview where a mentor was just sort of there listening into the conversation, so you were given a list of questions that you were just expected as a group to talk about, and that was when your previous experience of working with children really came into play, because they were just sat there listening for you to say, when I worked with that child I did, and when I worked with this child, and it was a sort of ticky thing. Whereas Strathclyde was a one-to-one interview, and it was a bit more formal, but it was the same thing they were looking for. It was still, have you worked with children, like prove to us that you have what it takes to be a teacher. Do you like being with children? When have you been with children before? And then Glasgow has a written exam, but it's more just checking for basic grammar, and I think it's got a maths one now as well, but it's basic arithmetic that as a teacher you should be able to handle.
That's so interesting, the way that the different universities have got kind of different setups. I never thought that would be the case.
My understanding is that Edinburgh goes very much on your paperwork, so they kind of decided that your experience has spoken for itself and you're probably going to get in, and so the group talk is just a check-in to make sure they have made the right decision. Very few of us got dropped during the Edinburgh interview, whereas Strathclyde, you're essentially talking about your paperwork as if they haven't read it before, if that makes sense.
Right, so starting from scratch.
Yeah, so they saw a lot more people. Edinburgh saw about 120, I think, when I did it, whereas Strathclyde was all day. There was hundreds of them. So it's just a different approach from the university, I guess.
A really good question here about, should I create a portfolio if I'm volunteering in a school during my time at college? So this is, about students that are perhaps studying here at Edinburgh College, looking to go into university to do teaching. Is a portfolio something that would be useful?
From my experience, nobody asked for a portfolio, but if it's something that would be useful for yourself, to get you thinking about your interactions with children, there's absolutely no harm in keeping one, especially if you were volunteering in a school and you see good examples of practice. I would definitely encourage keeping record of that, and experience with children that pose different challenges in terms of additional support needs if you're working with them. If you've been exposed to some of the interventions that are being used to help those children, then I would be taking record of them. In terms of then having to present such a portfolio, I've never heard of it, but I can't see why it would do any harm to have one at the same time.
Okay, great. And this might be a tough question to ask. How much experience working with children and young people do you need to be considered for a primary teaching degree?
So obviously I don't have the answer for the exact amount that they're looking for, but from my experience and from speaking to other people who have gone on to do teaching at university, the more the better. But it's anything. It doesn't have to be in a school, which I think lots of people think it does, like you have to be in a classroom. Not at all. Like I already explained, I was a scout leader, I was a sports coach, I was a nanny, I was from a very big family, which actually worked in my favour as well. I have younger brothers and sisters, and even being able to talk about them, it is just showing that you have an interest in working with children and that you understand what you're getting yourself in for, kind of thing. So yeah, I would say as much as you can, but don't get hung up on it being in a school. There's loads of clubs out, especially in Edinburgh. There are loads of things that children are involved in, and they're always looking for volunteers. All of them are perfectly valid experience.
Yeah, great. Do students need National 5 maths to get into primary teaching?
Yes, you do need to have a maths qualification, and I would advise taking the highest maths that you can attain. You don't need it, you do just need the National 5, but if it's something you enjoy whilst you're at school, I would continue with it, especially when it gets to teaching. So I currently teach upper school. I'm in a primary 7 class, and they're very able. I'm very fortunate to have a very able class, but it means their maths knowledge is very, very good. It's obviously not higher maths level, but my point is more, if you have a really solid understanding of maths yourself, it means you can teach it to some children one way, and then you might have to adapt how you explain it to another group of children.
Okay.
So for yourself, you need to be so solid in your understanding of those concepts before you can explain the same thing 6 different ways.
Right.
And that's actually a skill that you need. And if I could go back in time, I would sit my higher maths. That would be my biggest regret.
Okay.
Because I totally love teaching it now. So yeah, maths you do need, and I would go for as high a qualification as you can get.
Okay. Another question here is, can I do a degree and then train to be a primary teacher? But we've kind of already answered that.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's exactly
what
you
I did. Yeah. And I don't think there's any restriction on the type of undergraduate degree that you do.
Okay.
There's some things that will work in your favour in the interview. There's certain things they're looking for. So if you had a maths-based degree in Scotland, they're crying out for teachers with a solid maths knowledge.
Yeah.
Primary and especially secondary, so that's going to work in your favour. It's the same with the sciences, they're really interested in. But it is simply just working in your favour. You could actually do any undergraduate degree and then apply for the PGD.
I suppose it's all the STEM subjects, isn't
They
it?
love it. Mad for it.
Mad for it. So which universities now offer the undergraduate primary education degree?
A lot of the universities offer these degrees. I applied to Strathclyde and Edinburgh, and I also applied to Glasgow. Stirling also offers an undergraduate scheme as well.
Okay, so there are quite a lot of options in Scotland, so you just kind of shop around for the best.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's plenty of options. I think there's less options in the PGDE course. There's more undergraduate. More universities are offering it as an undergraduate than a PGD.
Okay. And for any of you out there that are interested, there's also a course at Edinburgh College called SWAP, and it helps people who have left school a while ago get back into primary teaching. So it's that kind of stepping stone that you can study at college to get onto a university degree, to do primary teaching, which is fab. So we're on to the final question. Sure. Already. So our final question for you just now is, where do you see yourself in 5 years in your career?
I see myself doing what I'm doing. I'm very happy where I am. I don't really have any want to go into management.
Okay.
Lots of people do, but if you take on management, you're out of the classroom. And right now, for me, I like being in front of the kids every day.
Yeah.
Hopefully still in primary 7. That's what I like to teach. So yeah, I guess I'll be the primary 7 teacher in 5 years' time.
Great. I love it so much. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Emma Jane. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks to everyone for listening. We hope you find this episode useful, and tune into our next podcast episode to find out what industry we'll be finding more about next time. Thanks.